Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Thursday, January 29th. I'm not sure if this video is going up late tonight, like 10 o'clock tonight or something, or early tomorrow morning. Probably tonight, and then I'll just take tomorrow off, and my next video will be posted on Saturday. So this is an epic video, more leaked internal phone calls, Zoom calls from Erika J. Kirk and the weird shit with Candace. But it's really about acting, lying, and hypocrisy. I get into the Old Testament again and some stuff with that, and how people are punished for telling the truth. I mean, there's some themes in this video. I made the rest of the video already, but I just want to share this story with you. So I went in the chicken house, and the chickens have been in there, and we've had a bunch of starlings and sparrows. So the thing's a mess, right? There's just poop everywhere, like all kinds of birds that aren't supposed to be in there are in there. And these Cooper's hawks hunt the starlings, and they follow them into the chicken house. And they always sit in this same spot. And I don't know if this is a young one, because it really wouldn't get the hint. It doesn't seem to be after the chickens, at least in the house. It ended up eating a starling, which I'll show you the feathers that were left over. And it came back today. So this started yesterday.
In our chicken house, chickens are going nuts. Yeah, you're leaving. You're fucking leaving. I'm leaving out here.
So I end up kind of yelling at it here. You'll see the starlings are flying around, and the chickens are going nuts. And I'm trying to get it, so it realizes it's not safe to stay here.
Hawk just doesn't want to leave. Come on, bro, you gotta get out of here. It's a Cooper's hawk, a smaller hawk. That thing's been flying around here for a while. Just can't be in here, bro. It didn't seem to try to kill any chickens, but they weren't psyched about it being here. Because for obvious reasons.
Okay, so I looked it up, and not that I was going to kill it anyway. I'm just, I don't like to kill things. I'm always been a person fascinated with animals. My wife and I, part of the reason living on a farm, we interact with a lot of, wild animals as well. Sometimes we lose some chickens to predators, but, we don't like killing our chickens either. Like, it's more of a, it's not cost effective to have older chickens around, but some of the chickens become very, we like better than others, and, it's like a whole thing, but, they become like pets. They're not, some of them are even more friendly, and, they walk up to you and they're, whatever. And so it's kind of hard to get rid of them. I don't like doing it. And so if you have predators, a lot of times the older chickens are more susceptible when they start getting sick and, whatever, to predators. So it isn't like the predators don't do some kind of a service. But in this case, we have hundreds of starlings. My wife has been feeding the wild birds, and we have chicken feed out, and the starlings come in, and they see them in here. Sometimes there's like 20, 30 starlings in this chicken house, shitting all over the place. A bunch of them got into our old barn and just covered it with poop. And starlings are an invasive species. Like, they come from England. They take over natural wild birds, local birds' habitats. And, they're just a pain in the ass, them and the European sparrow. And so this presence of this Cooper's hawk decreased the amount of starlings we had. So there are some advantages to it. But if you kill one of these hawks, it's totally illegal. Like, you have to go to the Game and Wildlife and show that you've exhausted all possibilities to protect your flock, and demonstrate how killing that this bird's killing your chickens is doing, financial harm. And the reality is it's not. I mean, it hasn't even killed a chicken yet. So, and I like seeing these things, but I mean, you just can't have it there in the chicken house. So it's like it's a cool little bird. It's a neat thing to see up close and interact with, but I have to send a message that this is not a good place for you to be, right? So, I was raising my voice to a little bit and, making it feel uncomfortable. So it's like, they don't want to be around people. Like, everything's scary of people. And so even though there's no real threat to it, because like I said, I'm not going to kill it, it still has, it doesn't know that, right? So eventually I get it to fly out of there. You got to watch its talons. I mean, it's not aggressive. At least this one isn't, but sometimes they can be, they can like try to scrape your head and shit. And I was wearing 3 hats, so that wasn't going to happen. But either way.
There's Goldie in there.
Okay, so those of you who saw my other video, Goldie was out on the fucking roof of whatever, an owl or something. Maybe I don't think the hawks usually don't hunt at night, but I think it was probably an owl. But something tried to get her, probably a bird of prey. And then she stayed in the chicken house for like 2 days. She wouldn't leave. She stood on the roost the whole day. We didn't even see her get down from the roost.
Something up here. I don't know if it's some birds in the wall. Some birds over here. Fucking starlings over there. Hiding away. What's up, Goldie? She's hiding there. Alright, so that's what's up with my life.
So there's some starlings in the wall. They're all hiding from the fucking Cooper's hawk. And so Goldie, then the Cooper's hawk came back today and everybody left. I can show you a little bit of that, and it's coming up. There's some more stuff here. And then she wouldn't go back in tonight. Like, I just put her back in. I had to fucking chase her back in because she didn't want to go back because there'd been a hawk in there. So it's, anyways, it's a whole thing.
This other barn, check for eggs. You can't really see it. There's a rabbit just went in there. This rabbit was right in here in this hole in the barn. I saw something disappear. I wonder if it was like a rat or something. It's just a harmless little rabbit. But then I came out here and it was, you could see it going into this little hole here. It's disappeared. That's a good little place for that to be. That's probably the rabbit by our door. Here's some fucking blood or something over here. I don't know what that is. It's food. All right.
So anyway, I after the whole fucking thing with the hawk, I went in to check to see if there was any, the dead chickens in the auxiliary barn that's open all the time. Sometimes they go to hang out there. And also the hawk, these animals are just out there. I mean, today was 17 degrees, and I felt like it was a heat wave. I was like, it's fucking hot today. And we're not going to get above freezing for another 10 days. It's fucking crazy. This is probably the coldest winter. I did a winter in the Panhandle in Idaho, and I think that must have been colder, but, there's probably other shit going on that was more stressful than, you don't remember like a bad winter, like when it's summer again. You forget about all this shit. But anyways, so then the hawk, I saw it again. It was eating something.
Update. There's the hawk up there. Our neighbor's tree, right there. There's the hawk. The chicken house is over that way. And it just killed. So it must be hunting those starlings, which is a fucking benefit, which I love. But gotta watch out for the chickens here. So that's it's eating the whole bird. So if it was a chicken, it would have left more here, but it hasn't. So, but I'm not psyched it's coming around here for food. Like, it's good to eat the starlings, but the chickens are next. So it's a whole fucking thing.
So I saw the hawk by we have a water pump out there, and there's like a sink, and it was right there. That's where the feathers were. And it was eating something like, fuck, it's eating a chicken. So I went over there. Now, when they eat chickens, they can't eat it all at once. You see that they're smaller than the chickens. And, birds eat a lot of food, but it takes a while for them to eat it. And so, I went over there and I'm like, those feathers are small. That's got to be a starling feather or a sparrow or something. I think it's a starling. And so, but then I'm like, fuck, it's coming back. And then once it thinks it's a food source, how long before it starts going after the chickens, and that becomes a thing.
There was some steam coming up from the whatever, but there's a patch where my wife has put out some food. There's a dark-eyed juncos, and there's a big giant flicker there. And there's one starling. I've been hitting the windows to get rid of the starlings. The flicker probably chases the starlings away too. The flicker has a red spot on the back of its head. The flicker's back of its head, it just turned around there. And the starling just started to come back in. And then they got scared by my voice, and then they go again. No.
So there's steam coming up. I don't know, fuck, you can see it, how well you can see out of there. But there was this northern flicker, which is a bigger bird. It's kind of like a woodpecker. And, later a cardinal came by, but mostly it's these starlings. And these starlings fly in these giant flocks. I'm sure you fucking have them. They're invasive species. And My family and I wanted to get purple martins, and we went to some presentation by our house. This is years and years ago, like 30, 25 years ago, something like that. And there's a guy out there, and he'd come down from Washington, D.C., worked there, and his mom had these amazing purple martin houses, and she probably had 200 purple martins. And then he showed you how to build these various things to keep snakes from eating the purple martin eggs. And purple martins is a kind of swallow, the biggest kind of swallow. And they're good for eating flying insects, right? Mosquitoes and things like that. And so he had another house to catch starlings and catch these sparrows because they would come in and take over the nest. And they're very fucking shitty birds, like, at least according to him. And, they're these invasive birds, so it's good to have predators that kill them. Because, like I said, there's hundreds of them. My wife throws food out for all these wild birds, chicken food. And then, like I said, they eat the chicken food and they're, causing a big mess out there. But, I mean, for some of these birds, it's the difference between life and death. Having some food that they can access and also having, a place to stay outside of the wind and the cold for a little bit. So, it's a little bit of a trade-off. It's like a kind of thing we're offering here,
Pretty mom in here. The thing's mostly about starlings. She's all upset. This one lays eggs. And here's a fucking hawk. Dude, you can't fucking be here, bro.
Initially when I saw the hawk, it was like, oh, wow, this is cool. But, the chickens are going nuts. They're all fucking destabilized and they're all traumatized and having fucking hissy fits. When I was a kid, I had a very high comprehension level. I had like a 12th grade reading level when I was 7, 8 years old because I would go read about my favorite animals. And I was always, had different ones. And I really got into birds of prey. I was reading about the peregrine falcon. And, at that time, they were being wiped out by DDT. And, DDT, it's good for me, was a pesticide that was killing all these bugs. And pigeons would eat the bugs, and they would have a lot of DDT. And then a falcon would eat 2 or 3 pigeons a day. And their eggshells would be very thin. And they weren't able to reproduce. And they were down to like hundreds of them, like just a small number of some of these birds of prey. And I always, was very interested in these things. I mean, these birds of prey are very like cool and, intelligent. And I mean, they're really interesting. And when I was living in Idaho, my family and I went to this bird of prey rescue farm. And, we saw a condor. It was like it had a 14-foot wingspan. It was like fucking crazy. And, really memorable experience. They had some peregrine falcons and some other birds. So I'm always a big fan of raptors and birds in general and, just all animals. And so I'm not a person that, it's like I said, illegal to kill these things. It's funny. They don't want you to kill the birds of prey, but if you catch a fucking raccoon, you're not supposed to release it. You're supposed to kill it, right? And so, they have these catch and release traps. And the raccoons are really, they're really cute, and they're neat looking. They have those little fucking guilty little masks like they're bandits. But anyways, I'm just not into it. Like I'm not, if I had to defend, myself or whatever, defend the farm or whatever it is, whatever it might be from predators or hunting and things like that, I could do it, but unnecessary killing. And, like I said, you can't even do it anyway. So, it's not something I want to do, and it's illegal. And, this bird hasn't even killed a chicken yet, but I just don't want it to be comfortable. Like, I don't want it to feel like you just go in there and hang out. They always, the 3 times we have Cooper's hawk on 3 separate years, and I don't know if this is the same bird because, they all look pretty much the same. I was wondering if this was a young one that just thought like the chickens were, like almost like, the chickens kind of look a little bit similar to the Cooper's hawk. And maybe it's just looking for a warm place to go and snack on a few starlings and whatever it is. But, it hadn't taken aggressive action with the chickens, but we had a chicken that was just killed a little while ago by something. We had some kestrels that killed these younger chickens, and the kestrels disappeared. There's a few that stay here through the winter, but they haven't come back to the yard. But then we had a hawk that took one of the mid-sized chickens, the not fully developed chicken. The blondie one I showed you, Goldie, she's not fully grown, right? So there's some chickens like that. And so, you know, it's a problem and we have to deal with it and, you know, keep on checking it and things like that. And so, you know, it disappeared, but when I had to drive out for a little bit. I was coming back around 5:30. I saw it again towards the fringe of our property. And so it wasn't, you know, it's definitely around and it's going to be a constant kind of always checking to make sure it's not fucking coming in and, you know, make sure it knows that we're here and it's not welcome. But anyways, it disappeared for now, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, young one. We've had them in here before, and they had to kill the chickens in the house itself. Of course, the chickens, they love it. You're getting so loud and stuff. It's me, you guys. It's just fucking me. There's Tufty Tough all hiding in here. So there hasn't been anybody. Right. So that's what's up. This is Tufty Tough. Is that kind of my favorite was. Yeah. There's 2 eggs. We got one of the bantams is laying. I mean, it's just unsettled in here. These guys have been laying. Tulsi, come here. Come on. This guy might be laying. Goldie's in here. Goldie just isn't about. She isn't even leaving the fucking nest box. Never mind the hole. Leaving the. She hasn't left the coop since we.
Yeah, the guineas are like alarms that go off like fucking 200 times a day. So it's kind of interesting. Like I said, Goldie then did leave the fucking the chicken house, and then I just found her in the barn, and she was going to sleep there again. I mean, definitely would have been food for something, but I got her back in. So all right, with that, you know, let's move on to the the other stuff here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I forgot to turn my microphone on, so I'm redoing an audio that I think was pretty good. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to match it this time, but let's see. I have one practice run. Thursday, January 29th. I think this video is going up tonight. I've been putting up videos, a lot of big, long videos up back to back to back to back. And I think this one will be like, you know, a little bit later. I think I released the other one around 4 yesterday. I might put this one up at 9 or tomorrow morning. I don't know which. I have to figure it out. So big bombshell stuff. I don't know bombshell, but like big things are coming out now with these leak videos, which I want to address the nature of them being leaked in a moment. But this video, one of my viewers sent me a article about Erika Kirk's. I asked in a video, I wonder what her talent was. Like, I know very little about these beauty contests, but I know the talent. They have a talent, right? They do a bathing suit thing, which their, you know, bodies are evaluated. And they do this, you know, interaction where they talk about making the world a better place, where they like show that they're people of substance. But they also have a talent, like they sing or they play a fucking ukulele. I mean, it's some fucking bullshit thing, right? And I was wondering what Erika Kirk's talent was, because she doesn't seem to have them. I didn't think she sang or danced, and she didn't. And what her talent was is dribbling basketballs. And I couldn't find a video of that, which is sucky because I know one exists, and if it ever comes around, I will show it, if anybody finds it ever. But she dribbled 2 basketballs at once, and, you know, I wonder what the other girls did, like how much that thing's rigged. Because dribbling 2 basketballs, I know she wasn't some great basketball player. She played at a Division I school, right? A girls' basketball, so whatever. But it gets into her being a tomboy, this kind of thing. So, Candace Owens, before we get to that, I must tell you what else was going on here. So, there's a clip of Don Lemon's going after hypocrite Megyn Kelly, so that'll be hilarious. I haven't watched it yet, but we know what Don Lemon's capable of bringing out, you know, creating for us to laugh at. A little clip of Megyn Kelly, and then somebody sent me a Bible, you know, the Bible reference to something to do with Abraham and you know, this circumcision stuff I talked about before, Old Testament stuff, and then somebody left me a. We're going to get into some Old Testament stuff, and then somebody left me a comment which I want to read about this. So there's pretty much the big part of the video. Maybe there'll be some Alex Preddy stuff. I don't know. It's kind of got into goofy world. There is going to be a little bit with Megyn Kelly and Don Lemon. But now it just becomes like, and I'll talk about that a little bit. So Candace Owens. Well, first let me play this clip right here leading up to the leak tape.
Yeah, but we are going to see some grief. So I'm going to allow you guys to watch this for 5 minutes.
You're going to allow us to watch it? Thanks, Candace. You're allowing us to watch this. So like, what the fuck, right? Who the fuck, so, in this, the beginning of this video, and I'm sparing you having to watch Candace, so you're fucking welcome. She's finally getting to it, right? There's a lot of filler that she puts out there, and it's cost her, like this whole Fort Huachuca thing, all this stuff. She realized, these people look at their numbers all the time. And her last video got 1.7 million, and the one before that, where she had, the woman being fired, and that leaked one, and then following one where she had that leaked video, those should have 3 million views, right? These are bombshell views. So either people have lost interest in the Erika Kirk thing, or they realize Candace is full of shit. And she did that to herself by putting in filler and not getting to this right away, like months ago. Because she came out and said that the meeting with Erika Kirk, that Erika lied to her about the magic bullet and the magic neck, Charlie Superman neck, that she said that was Andrew Covert. She threw Andrew Covert under the bus like 3 or 4 times and said he was the one who's done all these things. And then it's come out that Candace now knows that Erika's lying about all this stuff, that Erika has been, behind the scenes pushing this agenda, and also going out and smearing Candace, right? That Erika Kirk was lying to her face in the meeting. And, a bunch of stuff about that. Instead of getting into the Fort Huachuca, this was what it was always about. Erika and Candace don't like each other. And, Candace probably thinks that she's better at, she's straight up said it, at running an organization, given her success on her own YouTube channel, and her being able to carry an audience, and Erika Kirk being, Candace is really unlikable, but, she has, a talent. She's good at what she does. It's manipulative and icky, but it's fucking much better than what Erika produced. We're just talking about watchability, and Candace is really hard to watch, but she delivers things. Erika Kirk just is, she delivers a train wreck stuff, right? The bedazzled, the bad stuff, the hug. She's just a walking fucking nightmare for her company. And TP US Gay is done. And Candace is, done too as well. She's still carrying a fairly large audience, but, this is where people just kind of, the majority of people just kind of know you suck, right? That's what it is. So this story really, isn't going anywhere, but now it's finally where it should have been right off the bat, right? Where Candace is going after Erika and not these proxy wars. And, Erika's fucked. And that people in the organization were calling this a cult. This is what Candace said. That, they felt like this was a cult where Erika was put out there to make them work harder. To make them work without, that they were all supposed to work diligently for God and Charlie. So I don't know how much of this stuff. It's a big dose of Erika Kirk, and she sucks. And I can only tolerate so much of it, so I assumed, whatever, for you guys. But there is something telling here that's going to lead into the thing later when I talk about the Old Testament.
Had private conversations with him. I want you all to hold on to those. And I want you all to remember those so deeply. I want you to journal about them. I want you to be able to tell your kids about them. I want you to put those in your heart as why you're still here with the Turning Point USA family, because that's what we want.
Okay, so she's genuinely, well, maybe not genuinely, but it's more believable. She's like, she's not bedazzled, right? She's got her fucking, like she's, you know, disheveled. This is 9/16, so this is a week before the big event with Trump, the funeral memorial bullshit thing, where she gave the call afterwards, which we know that she ceased to grieve then. She wasn't crying. She was celebrating, happy, excited, feeling proud of herself for pulling this off. Feeling good about her CEO, like the amount of money they were bringing in, the success they were having. It was like a sales meeting where they're just celebrating their successes, and where she is mostly for herself, which never goes well, right? Those things are always like there's like a backfire. Whenever you have that, when you start walking with a swagger, start feeling yourself, things go south. But she is, this is more sincere than her bullshit crying. I can't say this is real crying because she's not to be trusted, and she is performing for people she doesn't know very well, people that she's their boss, and she was married to the boss, right? Like, it's a fucked up thing when there's people who work for TPUSK, and they all are, some of them have ambitions, some of them are working their way up. There's the administration, like there's the workers and there's the administration, and there's known entities, and then there's the boss's wife, who you may or may not like, right? Like whatever they liked, believed in Charlie. Maybe they didn't even love Charlie that much, but she wasn't a part of it. She wasn't a part of the, she was a stay-at-home mom, and they're pretty big about that. And she was not ever an employee. Remember, he was supposed to hire her. Instead, he decided to date her in that weird fucking contrived conversation that, they're telling of their meetings to, this is how we met kind of bullshit story, which, is not factually correct, which people have exposed. And, she knew about for a while. But, she didn't work for Turning Point. Like, she was a guest speaker a few times. She was on stage with Charlie, this is my religious wife kind of bullshit thing, putting their marriage out there because marriage is a big thing for Christians and, Republicans, but like she was never a part of that thing. So, I want to talk about the leak. Let's go back and let her finish here.
Like I said to our small group after whatever day that was that I did the thing on TV, how many days are still going Good Friday. I told the team, I said, Turning Point USA will continue like my husband always wanted, and it would be bigger than ever.
Yeah. What? How do you know? That's not true. It's like fucking, it's shrinking. It's like, it's going the opposite direction.
And we're going to honor him by doing that. We're going to stay humble. We're going to work hard because that's what he would want. And we're going to just make it grow. And we're going to keep our eyes fixed on heaven. And, like even Stacey said, he's gonna find ways to speak to us.
Charlie is going to intercommune with them, right? Which is not what Christians believe. That Charlie is some fucking saint in heaven, and he's going to bless them with his fucking great saintliness, right? This is a shackled up, materialistic piece of shit, right? So, there's something that she's going to say next that I want to get into about that. But just in terms of defining, Charlie as a person, his success was predicated on a couple of things. One, getting shackled up. Like, that's the first thing. If he doesn't get shackled, he's not Charlie Kirk, and there's no turning point. Like, he had to be propped up. And, whatever agencies or whatever handlers that are out there, whatever, not just Israel, whatever's out there, whatever had to do with Trump, Charlie was, given a green light. Like, if you think about professional athletes, right? Basketball is probably the best example of this, where, football is a little bit different because you excel with your, whatever it might be. But it's also about opportunity. And so you see a player get hurt and another player comes in, you're like, hey, this guy's fucking better than the original player, right, at the same position. but the person never got an opportunity. And in the NBA, they make people superstars. Like they make them into bigger stars than their playing ability. And the whole league is WWE'd around making this guy, pop. Like this is the path the NBA started taking during the Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson being this, effervescent, sort of, big personality person, and Larry Bird being this, hardworking white guy, this whole thing. And they represented their different cities, Boston and LA, and they became these icons of the NBA, right, in terms of this period of time. It kind of saved the NBA. And they learned that, this is like the WWE. But they have to, like, give you some opportunity. And there's great players. This is why the NBA is a better version of this. There's amazing basketball players. But some of them are not going to be superstars. And they're not going to win championships because they don't have the personality. They don't have they're not marketable. They're not willing to do that part. They're not willing to put their life out there and, drama and backstory and all the things that needs to happen. And so it's not just that you're a great basketball player. It's, that people have to choose you and prop you up, right? Make you into a superstar, right? And the same thing in politics. Like when they were running against Trump, when Biden won the presidency, the Democrats had 20 some odd candidates that were debating. They had like Marianne Williamson and Andrew Yang. I mean, people like fucked up people, like, that the Democratic Party they're not even like, professional politicians. Tulsi Gabbard. This is Kamala Harris. And, they gave Kamala Harris run. Now, Kamala Harris sucked worse than all these people. She was really bad at debating. She had that goofy fucking laugh. Nobody liked her. They put her out there. Like the media was, Chris Matthews said that his dream ticket, like this is early on 2019, that his dream ticket was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I mean, why would you say that? That political insider, that piece of shit Chris Matthews that got Me Too'd, right? But they gave her some run, and the American people said, fuck you. The Democrats said, fuck you. We don't like this bitch, right? But they had these 20 candidates. And you'll see this in every presidential primary. These people come out, they have no money, no backing, and they have no chance. But they're still, like, at least out there. Like, you can't even get up on stage, right? Like, you can't, say I'm going to run for the Democratic nomination and be a part of these debates. But the Democrats, they had all these weird motherfuckers out there. And there was, if Bernie Sanders had made himself viable, but they weren't going to pick Bernie. Bernie was the most popular. He had the most energy and, behind him. And then Elizabeth Warren, who had made herself into, respectable, possible, whatever. But she didn't even get a position right out of this. She sabotaged Bernie. She ran on Bernie's ticket for liberals, like the hyper-liberals. And then there was Nancy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg. And these were all people that beat Joe Biden in the primary. They were ahead of him in the first two primaries. But none of those people, Joe Biden had already been picked, right? He was the only person with any sort of a backing, and it was like, we're either going to have Joe Biden or you guys want fucking Bernie Sanders. And so the political insiders came out and were on fucking TV saying, we are not going to let Bernie Sanders win. And so they rigged it for Joe Biden, right? He was handpicked. And so this is like what happened with Charlie Kirk. Like there's all these right-wing pundits, but they put him out there. And then there was all these angry young men, white guys mostly, but, angry young men who realized, the Democratic Party didn't even put men. I talked about that CNN report, that who do we serve, right, under Kamala Harris? And women was number 2 or 3. And it went through, like, the gay community. It went through all these different groups. And it was 16, and women was one and men wasn't another one, right? This anti-men kind of thing. And, the Democrats are now trying to reel and not play this fucking identity politics. They realize that was a disaster, and hopefully they remember it. But they'll become intolerable as Trump implodes, right? But there was all these angry young men out there, the manosphere. And there's these Christians and all these people that were so freaked out by how intolerable the Democrats were and what's happening with the fucking men playing in women's sports and all that shit. And they, using his shekels, Charlie Kirk tapped into all that stuff. And there was this pro Trump swelling growing, this growing swell of pro-Trump sentiment. And Charlie Kirk rode that, with his shekels, but it was a short-lived thing, right? Because these people were not passionate about Israel, and they quickly turned on it, especially young Republicans, which we now know. And they realized Trump's a piece of shit. Trump fucked him on Epstein. Trump is like the opposite of a real, what a Republican's supposed to be. He's certainly not a Christian. And so Charlie Kirk is completely exposed on those two things. So Turning Point was already fucked. And then they took him away, and he was by far the best presenter. They have those two little twinks, two little fucking beta males sharing one testicle that host the show now. And they got this cunt, right? So, this is a disaster for them. But, it was short-lived anyway. It wasn't going to grow anymore. And it wasn't based in some divine providence. And that's the important thing. That they're trying to say this is, this revolution that's happening that Charlie's not going to be a part of, but he's going to monitor it from heaven. So let's go back here where she's saying that stuff. Look to heaven here.
Like even Stacy said, he's gonna find ways to speak to us. And he's going to speak to you in different ways. Every person's going to be different, but you'll get little moments where you're like, okay, Charlie, I see you. It might be here on campus. It might be in quiet moments of the night. But he's here, and he's more alive than ever. And he's going to guide us.
So why wouldn't Jesus guide you, right? Do you think Jesus is too fucking busy? A disembodied soul can be everywhere, and it can be with people all around the world. Disembodied soul, a higher developed soul, can all souls, but it's not limited by physical interaction, in physical energy. You're not lugging a body around, right? When your soul is free of your body, and if you've reached a high level of spiritual development, you can be everywhere at once, right? So you could be with every person on earth. If every person can be having interactions with Jesus, for example, and Jesus was not as evolved as people think he is, but wasn't he more involved than Charlie? Sure, Charlie wasn't even spiritual. So to say that you need Charlie to guide you, he's now, people put these St. Christopher medals on because I remember these nuns that I used to hang out with when I was in 8th grade, my mom's prayer meeting. And they had different medals, if they were going on a trip, there was a saint that was supposed to protect them from that and all that kind of stuff. But all you really need is God. You don't need to interact with, you can interact with higher developed souls because God doesn't have a mind and has, intermediaries that work for God, that do God's bidding. These divine beings that oversee this planet on a spiritual level and are moving it towards a more spiritually evolved people here, right? But you don't need Charlie Kirk to oversee you. This is fucking silly, and Charlie Kirk is this. He's going to be reincarnated. He didn't make it to, what heaven really is liberation. The original understanding of the soul came from ancient Indian, and this is a different race of people that lived thousands of years. When human beings were, the human beings that left this planet, the higher developed souls that were here technologically and spiritually, and created this slave race that now, that we all are. Some of us were, in a past life were these, people that lived for thousands of years, hundreds of years, right? And they, knew a lot more about spirituality and the soul and these things. And this is where all these religions have come from, this discovery of a soul, right? There's no talk about who discovered a soul in the Old Testament because they didn't discover it in fucking Israel. That didn't happen. That group of people, the soul was, the idea of the soul was discovered in ancient India, and the Atman, right? That's the original word for the soul in Sanskrit, and so that's important to understand because there's a lot of teachings about the soul that came with the understanding of a soul, right? They would try to explain it to people. It can't be burnt by fire. It can't be seen. It can't be heard. There's all this description because people are like, what are you talking about? Fucking, what is this thing? They're, almost animalistic people who are, physical, and many of them didn't have abstract thought, and they're trying to explain what a soul is. Now, luckily for us, we all grow up knowing this about a soul. But this idea that, your soul escapes from planet Earth, and, people right now, the people who enjoy life, who have better lives, right, because of technological development, and don't suffer as many physical miseries, primitive people are always fucking suffering from too cold, too hot, and tragedies, and, death, and, childbirth, and, and we're miserable, suffering and sad, and loss of loved ones, and wars, and, the brutality of life, people who are slaves and all this. You want to die, you want out, you want to fucking, this life sucks, miserable every day. People live in abuse, people live in fucking poverty, right? The suffering masses, the moaning masses, as Babaji called them. People who are just miserable. And then, so for them, this idea that you get out of this fucking life and go to some great place and it's paradise, it's really a big selling point. But to achieve that, you have to reach a certain level of spiritual development, which you don't get from accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior. You don't get it. You can't. You have to reach a level yourself, and then you're liberated from life on planet Earth. That you have to come back and reincarnate. Charlie wasn't at that point because he was a materialistic piece of shit, and he wasn't even spiritual. He hadn't even stepped on the spiritual plane of existence. He was, doing Shabbat and dumb shit like that, right? And so he's not, he's probably maybe even reincarnated. He might be a baby now, right? That's how quickly it happens for some people. The people who are a little bit spiritual, you get more time between this, your death and your next life to process and pick, an ideal circumstance. So maybe, he's in the process of reincarnating. Jesus has come back, I think a number of times since he was Jesus, right? So that's even higher developed souls who don't reach that level. So Charlie wasn't higher than Jesus, Jesus didn't reach that level himself. So, this idea that he's overseeing this in heaven is silly. Why not have Jesus do it? Shouldn't Jesus be your guy, not Charlie? You don't say, what would Charlie do? You say, what would Jesus do?
Then we just have to remain humble. But again, what I told the team was, I will fight like hell to make sure that all of you have a job here.
Okay, so this is, they're leaking this. And so, according to Candace, there's a lot of disgruntled employees that have been fired and other ones that are still there. And some of these who have been leaking to her the whole time, which means that this place is a fucking cesspit. This is a crappy fucking organization full of people who feel like they have to be whistleblowers, that feel like they're being abused. This is a cultish, abusive place. This is what, Candace Owens is relaying here. Or this is part of an information package that keeps keeping these people involved, that this is all contrived, and, Erika Kirk and Candace Owens are completely handled, and everything that they're doing is part of some script, which, you'll never know for sure, how much of it's like that, right? But that this is, a part of it. All these videos, someone was taping these videos with the idea that they might someday leak them, right? Why would you tape this video otherwise? This is a private internal call, what he was killed on the 10th? 6 fucking days after she died, some employee is taping this with what the fuck is this bitch talking about? And is sitting on this, whenever it made it to Candace's greedy little hands, right? So, think about all that shit, right? People doing that. And, she's legitimately, maybe, or not, but she's more believable here as being crying, she's just, disheveled, and no makeup, her face is kind of puffy, and, it's she's not.
I don't want anyone to think the job's in jeopardy, because your family, if you choose to leave, that's different. I never will, and I promise you, I will make sure that I never allow a point to where you have to leave because we cannot financially afford you.
Because of course now they fired all these people, right? This is part of why Candace and this is coming out, because they're just they fired all these people, and there was the weird tape. now been 3 leaked tapes, right? The one where the woman recorded her conversation as she was being fired without, for no reason that they gave her. There was the video yesterday of her celebrating their big fucking, sparkle Rama thing that they did. With the whole fucking Charlie Kirk. That was his fucking funeral. That was 14 days after he died or whatever. And then there was this video, and there's probably more to come, right? And this all is, I mean, if this is legitimate, like Erika Kirk does not been told that she's not a part of this, or they're not like this. She's not some actress, and they're telling her that this is what we have to do. This is part of your role, whatever that you have to play. If she's sitting there watching this stuff be leaked and Candace going after her now, like Candace is like going full out in this whole bullshit that's happening, right?
And that is a promise. I want our family to stay together the best it can. Obviously, circumstances, things there's unforeseen things that might pop up here and there that we can't foresee in the future. But for right now, the way things are, I would like to remain if they are status quo. And I think that's the best thing to do. And everything else we can worry about later. But I just want to let you know that you guys are all very loved. I'm very proud of you. And Charlie would be, I think Charlie's just, I'm trying not to say that he's obviously celebrating in heaven amongst so many things, but he's so proud of all of you.
It's so fucking weird. She looks like this is a. Let me find the Aleister Crowley picture here, and put it next to her, and then I'll talk about that. But there's an Aleister Crowley, the most wicked man in the world. There's a picture that he's doing this. Let me find that. Okay, so she has those gaudy Freemasonic rings, and she's, in a more submissive position here. I'm not sure what this symbol means. I could look it up, but I don't care to. But Aleister Crowley looks, more aggressive, and their hands are different. He has the fists, and she has the hands on her face, but she has those Freemasonic rings, the symbolic rings that people have talked about, and all the symbology that was in her music video and in that Snake Eyes movie, all that stuff, Illuminati, Freemasonic stuff. And this is Tom Cruise from Eyes Wide Shut. At the end of the movie, he's being given a talking to by Sidney Pollack, and he's being told about what's up and all the stuff that's this secret society bullshit, right? And he gets up from the couch holding his hand on his face like this, which has a lot of, it's a submissive position. And so, it's like Erika Kirk's, this is her Aleister Crowley version of her being in a submissive position, right? It's a weird fucking thing, but, it's something. Like these things are connected here, right? In some fucking weird way. Anyways, let's get back to it. So one of the things about TPUSK, I'm harder on anything or anybody, any organization or any person, and I'll talk about this more when I get into the Old Testament as well, in a different way. But anybody who misrepresents God and speaks as God's representative, right? Because telling you what God wants you to do, right? Like, this is what God told me that you should do, right? It doesn't work, first of all. Like, there's sincere spiritual people that came down. There are lots of them. Sincere, higher developed souls that come down to planet Earth with a purpose to disseminate divine information. And more often than not, like 95% of the time, they get sucked into human bullshit and they fall spiritually. Like, how fucked up is that, right? Higher developed souls that come down here, including Jesus, they get sucked up in the drama because it's so enticing here. and or you know souls that have evolved over time, and then they do God's work. And there's people who legitimately do God's work, and there's millions of people out there doing God's work. The reason I love what I do, the Sajmark system, is because there is an emphasis on each person connecting to God. Instead of you looking up to one person and them saying, hey, God just told me to tell you this, that each person develops this relationship, right? And so, I shouldn't say religions fail. Religions succeed in preventing you from connecting to the divinity within you because they can control you because then they're the voice of God. We're the ones that control the voice of God. I talked about recently how they used to not let ordinary people read the Bible. You couldn't own a Bible. Like you were, you couldn't interpret the Bible for yourself. And the Bible is full of bullshit anyway, but a lot of bad stuff, but they wouldn't let you see the good stuff. And they wouldn't let you, even think about it yourself. You had to go to church and be told what to believe or not to believe. So this is how bad it is. Religions are the worst things because they prevent you actively from connecting to the divinity within you and focus on complete materialism. And so they're not only failures, they're demonic, right? There's I'm going to get into the whole devil thing. I got 2 comments I want to get to at the end of the video. But in that, the people that are saying that they speak for God and God wants you to do this and this is our God's movement, this kind of thing. God's movements are only, this is why I like my thing, the Sajmark system, and why when it became this shitty religion, why it was such a fucking tragedy. This cult-like thing that happened when this, this guy Dodgy fell like a fucking stone, dropped like a stone. I mean, someone who was, spiritually evolved before, and he went south, right? And fucking, and it happens to people. It's happened to all these, the best of the best people who are saints who fall because of whatever materialism bullshit they get, warped, whatever. It happens quite frequently, unfortunately. And then, when they come back, they have those tendencies, in past lives they did, and then they, it's something you fight against. But, in terms of the purity of the Sajmark system, it was there to help each person develop a relationship with the divinity within them, which is the only solution, where every one of us has to answer to God. We have some accountability because God and you are in relationship. An actual connective relationship. And there's people in religion who do that anyway, despite the shittiness of their religion. But it's, majority of people don't, and they really don't want connection to God because, when you connect to God, there's a lot of things you have to give up. And you don't want to do that. Your ego doesn't want to do that. So that's the history of human beings. And so that's why we have, like with TPUSK and Erika Kirk, and any organization that's claiming that, God is, we're the voice of God and we're on the side of God, and all the people on the end, especially when they have an enemy. Like divine people work for God, don't have enemies. You can't have prejudice. When you work for God, every person, even the people that you fucking hate, or, you shouldn't hate anybody if you're, a spiritual person, but even the people you dislike, they have a potential to be a saint. And you got to do your best to help them achieve that. Like even, regardless of how you feel about them personally, regardless of any kind of, shitty behavior on their part, because sometimes the worst people can turn completely around. My namesake, St. Paul, who was, persecuting Christians, and he had that, in Master Chargi, the third master of Sajmark system, was St. Paul in a past life. He had that moment in Damascus where he had an interaction with God and completely reversed everything and became a persecuted person. He went from persecuting Christians to being persecuted himself. And so this kind of thing can happen to anybody at any time. And who are we to say who will all of a sudden, in the right circumstances, wake up and connect to God, maybe even more so than we connect to God. So you have to, as a spiritual person, be there for everybody to help them to the best of your ability, right? And so when these organizations start, condemning groups of people, even atheists or whatever it is, liberals or whatever it might be, they're no longer godly people because, it's your job to bring those people back. The story of the prodigal son, which I don't love personally, because I believe you should reward people for doing the right thing. The prodigal son, that there's a big feast and all the for the son that left the family in the Old Testament, and the prodigal son returns, and it's like a huge feast, and the rest of the 9 kids who didn't leave are like, what the fuck, right? How come we didn't get a feast for staying, right? So that kind of thing. But the message there, which again, it's the Old Testament, is that you're always hoping to bring people back, into the fold. Everyone has God within them, and so there's that. I'll get more into this when I talk about the devil later on. But the bottom line is, this is what spiritual people are and what spiritual people need to be, right? Connecting to divinity within them and then helping people, not in a mansplaining kind of way, but in a, asking God for guidance and how to help people achieve the same thing, and praying for people. And you're doing whatever working on a spiritual level, praying for them and doing spiritual work that happens on a subtle level without resistance, right? Whenever you use force, there's a counterforce. So with all these religions that try to force people to their way of thinking, I understand why they had to do it, because people suck. People are degraded and will do degraded shit. We see it all the time. And so, spiritual people get overwhelmed. They come down here to do spiritual work and, get overwhelmed by how bad everybody sucks and how they're not, it's not catching, it's not taking. They're not picking up the opportunity, and, they start to despair, and then, maybe use heavy-handed tactics. They go down to the level of the people and try to, reason with them on a fear-based way, or whatever it is. And of course it doesn't work because people suck and don't want to do it. And so, it's really about a figuring out what's it going to take to get human beings to choose to connect to God. Like, people are willfully rejecting the opportunity to have an internal relationship with God. Like, people are doing it all the time. The majority of people, like, rejecting it's there for them. It's a natural thing to do. It's a gift, and they refuse to accept it. So that's where we are as a culture. All right, so let's get back to it here.
And he's so proud of all of you for keeping this mission alive. And he knows that you can do it. That's why you're hired. And he knows that you will be able to carry the torch. And he knows that you're going to do a great job. And you're going to be able to, even though days are going to be tough, honestly, the nights are the hardest. Mornings are pretty raw too. But once just what I've noticed these past several days is, if I didn't have the family, the Turning Point USA family with me, all of you.
There's the whole thing. There's their fake fucking little dabble, do you?
I would be a disaster. I mean, I would be in fetal position 24/7. But the fact that we have a continued mission to look forward to, and we have our family, it's everything. And some of you, this is your chosen family. And just rely and lean on each other. That's huge.
Okay, so we know that this family is fucking dysfunctional as fuck, right? So, like, if it was a really good Christian organization, there wouldn't be all this bullshit, right? When it's, when it's an operation using Christianity, using God as a way to facilitate the operation, it's something different.
Leaning on each other is huge, because all of you were together prior to this and we'll be together after this. And everything, and I told Justin, it's going to be something where everything before September 10th, any email you were working on, any project you were working on, it's not that it's irrelevant now. It's just things have changed, obviously. And the mission has gotten deeper, and the mission will grow deeper. But like, I just want all of you to know, we will be wise stewards. We will be vigilant. We will be humble.
She keeps on saying humble. But, she came out bedazzled in sparkles, hobnobbing with presidents and fucking, and blowing vice presidents.
And I just want you to know that, again, I'm with you. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And we're going to make sure that we honor my husband so well, that this whole world knows what his vision.
Like, she was always over the top. And some of the stuff she says is like real Christian shit, but she's, like, she's a poser. I don't know what she believes or what she doesn't, but, obviously she's Like, it's a role. It's some kind of act. And we'll get into acting in a second here. But it's off-putting. Like, this kind of person is off-putting. My ex was like this in a different way. Over the top, where she inherited a center for the Sajmark system. She was a preceptor, and preceptors are, people who volunteer. It's not like you give these sittings, these meditations. I've talked about it, extensively in other places. It doesn't really matter. And there's a guy who was moving back to India, and there's about 15 people, mostly they're all Indian. And she inherited this, and these people all quit. And she was like flipping out because she didn't know why. And they said, your devotion scares us, right? Because, people who talk this way, and she doesn't live it. Like my ex was, these people who are frauds, like she's a liar. She's deceiving. She's deceitful. She's a poser. She's acting. And there's, more to this story than we'll ever know. There's, parts of it that we're not going to know, what her role is and what she really was and whatever it is. But it's not coming from a sincere place. But even if she was like just this person, she's over the top in this rhetoric, but doesn't live it, right? Like there's a difference between what you can say and what you live. Are you living this, right? Are you living all these teachings in this way of being? Like there's things that sound weird to us, but Christians talk this way. Like there's segments of the Christian community that talk like this, like she does. But it's off-putting. Like the average person can't go there. And I think that this was pretty evident for all these people that work there. Probably didn't like her before, and then were freaked out by how weird she was and the way she was handling this. And then whatever's going internally on at TPUSK. And, it's hard for me to believe that they're not imploding intentionally, right?
Was and will be. And it's just, I feel so blessed and honored.
All right. So there's a couple more segments. I don't think I'll scan them. I'm not, I'll spare you those if I can. I don't want to watch them myself. I have to go through this stuff. Okay. So this is the beginning of the audio. She's laughing. Miss Candace, dropping to make sure that she shuts on air as much as possible.
Yes. Yep, there you go. Oh, look at all the thumbs up. Look how cute that is. Sorry, this is a little bit more informal than probably Charlie would be reacting. How sweet. I didn't know they could do that. I hate Zoom. I never liked Zoom. Sorry, you guys. I just wanted to say first and foremost.
You hate Zoom. So there she is in her natural state. Like it's fake, but it's still her natural sort of way. She's smiling and sort of glowing and flirtatious in all of her interactions. Like there's a hardness there that comes out. There's a deeper truth to Erika Kirk where there's a hardness, right? Where there's a bitchiness, which we saw, can I have one thing? Can I have this one thing for my family? Can I, that kind of thing. But that was also an act. Like, I don't think she has a authentic self. That's why she's not popping. There's no authenticity. Like, you strip away, because I want to get into acting and all this kind of stuff, right? As we go through her pageant stuff. Because that's, a fucked up thing that people do. But, you take away the makeup and you take away the, all the stuff. Like she's just letting her hair down. She's just disheveled and, she's got a kind of a puffy face and all that shit. All the stuff that, like all the beauty stuff, the stuff that all the artificial beauty stuff. And she's letting her hair down here. And she, she cries a little bit more sincerely. And maybe some of that's real. But, it seems all fake because, like, when part of it's fake, or your overall way that you present yourself is fake, then then there's nobody believes you, right? Like what is Erika Kirk? What's your real state of being?
Heart obviously is broken for you guys as much as it is for our family. You guys lost not only a boss, but someone that you looked up to, someone that you believed in his mission, that you also that you loved. You loved listening to his show. You loved hearing his wisdom on things. I'm sure
So you don't really know these people at all, do you? Like, she doesn't know shit.
You have also had very personal moments of where you sat down and
All right. So there's that, and there's other little clips here. I'm going to go through them. Again, I'm going to minimize this part of it. Back just a little bit more here.
And pray with one another, be there with one another, be soft with one another. Everyone,
You know, like who are you to tell people to pray or do that? You know, all this kind of stuff. But, you know, like she hasn't done anything. I mean, she won Miss fucking Arizona, but she's not somebody who has accomplished something. Like she's just been given a position she doesn't deserve, based in basically nepotism and tragedy that she may or may not be behind, right? But this part here, everyone agrees differently.
things differently. So if someone's acting weird, don't read into that. Weddings and funerals bring out the weirdest side in people. Just anyone who's been married knows that. And so don't read into that. Just love on each other.
So, you know, this weird thing, I don't know what she's going to do with her snot raggedness. But her dabbing her eyes and this stuff that she did, of course, this became her habit later on, right? But she was the weirdest one. I mean, I don't know what people are doing behind the scenes, but holy fuck, she was weird. All right. So that goes on for a bit, but that's whatever it is. So that's the new leaked video. And again, why are they leaking these things, right? You know, is it intentional? Is this part of a, like, you know, they roll out these packages of information and just, you know, I mean, people talk about distractions, and I'm like, you don't need to distract people anymore. Like every day there's bombshell shit going on. American citizens getting fucking shot and, you know, annexing Greenland, and, you know, Trump is just all over the fucking place, and then the Epstein stuff. And there's all that shit, right? So you don't need to do any of that stuff, but they do it anyway. All right, so let's go to the fucking beauty contest stuff. Okay, so this was from ChatGTP. Erika Kirk, formerly Erika Franzte, won Miss Arizona USA in 2012 by performing a dribbling exhibition with two basketballs during the talent portion. The unique display of athleticism showcased her basketball skills and set her apart from the other contestants. You know, I bet it did. And so a lot of this is going to be about acting and lying. So let's just get through this fucking beauty pageant bullshit stuff here.
Super tomboy.
She was a super tomboy.
Like dresses. Everyone thought I was a little boy because I wore Jordan.
She talks about being a tomboy and then finding her inner girly girl, whatever fuck she's talking about. All right, so I had to edit all that stuff out. It's not that important. It's not worth watching. We've had enough of Erika Franzte. Here's the other part that I showed, a little bit of the piece of the pageant, and then we can move on to better stuff. And this is her winning the competition. Okay, so they copyrighted this. I put the video up, and I'm like, fuck. Like, I didn't even, you know. It's a bummer. Because, whatever. I'll just show you the moment she wins here.
Willenchip. That means your new Miss Arizona USA.
Okay, and then eventually they put the fucking crown on this bitch. Crown, give her that fucking crown. Look at that fucking
Congratulations,
crown.
Erika Franzte.
So yeah, it's nothing worse than getting copyright for something that I didn't even need to use. You know, like, when that happened, that's her big moment there. They don't have the dribbling of the basketball, but, you know, we don't really need to see that. You know, it's all fake, right? It's all acted. It's all performative. It's all bullshit. It's just a weird, you know, they have to build a brand and present themselves. I mean, everybody learns to lie and act, you know, from a young age. You know, you don't want to go to school and you tell your parents you're sick and you're not, you know, whatever it is, right? People have, you know, their moment they're introduced to lying. Of course, there's a big Santa Claus bullshit thing that everyone, all these kids learn to lie about that and all that stuff, and grown-ups and parents, you know, all participating. But, I mean, overall, people are lying all the time. And, you know, women particularly learn to be actresses. Women get a lot more trained on how to act. They do a lot of faking it. You know, they resent it later on, blame it on men. But, you know, it's really women teaching women how to do this. And, you know, not that men don't do it, they're just not as good. And I want to show you these two examples as we move forward here. So this is Ron Howard's daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard.
In general, okay?
It could just be small talk. It doesn't matter.
You know what I like about Home Depot is you can get duct tape, all kinds of duct tape. You can get gray duct tape.
Yeah.
You can get black duct
Yeah,
tape.
I mean, Home Depot is huge, right?
I've gone to Home Depot many times, and I've bought all kinds of things. I've bought styrofoam. I've bought things that I could use to tape other things together to other things. I've bought piping. I really like buying nails and wood. I like buying, I was just wandering the aisles sometimes, buying all kinds of things at Home Depot. Sometimes I'm there for days. I stay in the Home Depot for days and days.
Yeah, she's making herself cry.
Days and days.
Yeah.
And I just stay there. And sometimes I just wander the aisles all by myself in Home Depot, and I think about all the amazing things that they have.
Yeah.
And I think about all the incredible products they have.
Yeah.
And I think about everything that they have at Home Depot, and I just think to myself, my God, Home Depot, how do you do this? How do you do this incredible thing? You give so much and you get so little in return. I mean, some people pay for the stuff, but are they really paying you enough for what it's worth? They're not really paying you what you really should have. And I think that at some point, people should actually give Home Depot what they're due, because it's not fair. It's a company. It's in a company that should be compensated. Oh my God!
You know, so there's that moment. But this is, you know, something that people have learned to do, which is to fake shit, right? And faking emotions. That's what I should say about women. You know, men get to lie or learn to lie about various things. Women are much better at faking emotions, right? Women are trained that, how to smile when they're not happy. You know, it's a pressure, like, you know, well, like I said, women have, the feminist women complain about this and get whatever they get about it. But, you know, it's a thing, right? Like, it's a fucking thing. And so this is what we saw with Erika Franzte. Then this other, when I searched for this video, another video popped up on my phone a little bit later, where she's talking about this. So I watched the end of the bit, and they were talking about, Andy Richter brings up how the producer's crying because Lowe's is a sponsor. And then she says, well, Lowe's doesn't make us cry, and they're like shitting on Home Depot then. You know, because, you know, they're paid to say that, right? This is part of the whole thing, like another layer of lying. But here,
I did the Q&A that you have tons of tips and tricks for acting. For example, you can make yourself cry by screaming. Can you share any more creative tips?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, you don't have to scream in order to cry. You have to lift your soft palate as you're talking. Yeah.
lift your soft palate. Now, most of us aren't really all sure what that means. I'd have to search for it, right? But this is like, you know, the level of deception here, right?
So that you learn to yawn. Like right now I'm yawning as I'm talking. She's gonna cry. And then it allows you to have teary eyes.
Wow, oh my goodness.
But it's not something that's like physical in any way, shape, or form in terms of like I'm emoting. So yeah.
I mean, can we give a round of applause right now?
Oh, I thank you. Thank you. I heard that Mel Gibson went to a school in Australia where they taught you, whoops, one snuck down, where they taught you the physiology of acting. I don't know if that's even true. Like, I honestly don't know if that's true, but I started to become really obsessed with that. So I would go to the library and I would just learn all about, like, okay, what are the trigger points within the human body that creates a reaction, like blushing or sweating or crying. And I would just read Romeo and Juliet every single night, the death scene before bed, and do it until I could do it.
Bryce, we heard it.
So, you know, I mean, think about what's happening here. I'm going to switch over to a voiceover. Okay, for those of you listening to this on the Journey series, when I put this into the Journey series, this is, I'm talking about Erika Franzte winning Miss USA pageant. And then, you know, I brought in Bryce Dallas Howard, how she can make herself cry in the second video where she talked about manipulating her soft palate in her mouth, which makes you have tears. And she researched the physiology of emoting, whether it be blushing or something, things that you could do to create that artificial emotion, you know, emotional reaction, right? And, you know, this is all about lying and deception. You know, the fact that we have actors and actresses that win awards for their ability to deceive. You know, there are people like Jim Carrey when he did, whatever that guy's name was, who played Latka on Taxi. I'll think of it in a moment. Please don't tell me. I don't need you to do that. Andy Kaufman. and he said he was channeling Andy. He became Andy, right? And then he postulated what would happen if he got to play Jesus, like he would become Jesus, right? But, people learn to lie and act and fake at a very young age. And it's a huge part of our, of our whatever it is. Like just in terms of like people's social media. Like if you're taking 40 photos to use one, that represents the kind of person you want to be known as, looking a certain way. And then you use filters to manipulate it, right? That's all deception. And you're trying to create something, a version of yourself that doesn't exist. And people start believing their lies, which is the worst part. In the Sajmark system, Babaji said, it's the worst thing about lying is when people start believing their own bullshit, right? Their own lies. He didn't use the word bullshit, obviously. But, when people start buying into their own lies, Trump is in that situation where he thinks he's the person he brags that he is, right? Like he's lost sense of like who he really is, the piece of shit grifter that he really is. At some point, I think he knew that. He certainly would be more conscious of it. But when people create an illusionary version of themselves and then they buy into it in such a way that they've lost touch with reality. There's various forms of psychosis that's a part of. And so you really can't do anything with the amount of lying. That's why I'm saying like this, this whole fucking, our currency is a lie. Our value of our money is a lie. Everything's a fucking lie, right? And so, like this is where we're at right now. And, there's no fixing that, right? Like you have to have everybody commit to being honest. Like going back to where lying is not, lying is expected. You go to work, they expect you to put on a happy fucking face when you're miserable. And you're supposed to give fake apologies when you don't, when you're raising your kids, it's always it should be an issue for people. Do you make your kids apologize if they're not really sorry, right? Like you just tell them to do it, performatively, to, appease other people. So, people are forced to lie all the fucking time. Or, there's telling the truth comes with consequences, right? Like telling the truth comes with fucking consequences. And so that's going to be a part of this, video. You're punished for telling the truth. Like if you're a spiritual person, especially in the Western part of the world, in America and these other places, the Eastern part of the world, what's considered it's considered the West. Yeah, the Western part of the world. Saints get killed all the time. You look at all the Christian saints, they all were tortured, and if they weren't killed, they were, disavowed. People who tell the truth, look at what's happened with the truth community. Conspiracy theorists were so demonized. People who were telling the truth about whatever, were made to be worse than actual criminals, right? Like it was worse for, again, Alex Jones isn't a truth teller, but for Alex Jones to criticize those families to $1 billion, where a wrongful death suit, if you kill somebody and they sue you, your company or somebody, and it's proven that you're negligent, wrongful death suits usually are about $1 million, right? So a person's life is attributed at $1 million. But if you say some hurtful things on the internet to these, again, of course, Alex Jones, that whole thing was staged, whatever that, because he's a shill and all that stuff. But like that's the message they were sending. It's worse to, say the truth on the internet, or at least, talk about things and verbalize your opinions about things, even if they're not truthful. But certainly, if you don't go along with the official story, remember how they were treating anti-vaxxers, like anti-vaxxers. Joe Biden coming out, and this pandemic is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. That I have that whole compilation. I'm not going to show you it here, but that's the way it was presented. That people who were telling the truth, or there's a lot of shitty truthers out there, a lot of disinformation agents, a lot of dumb fucks, a lot of fucked up crazy people. But there's people who, have a much better, more truthful version of events. Maybe not completely truthful, but are more truthful. And there's a hierarchy of truth in the truth community. Not one that's created by control and socialization, but it's created by how close you are to the truth, right? Just like with spirituality, you are whatever you are in spirituality. You can't bullshit your way into heaven. I don't believe in heaven like you guys, Christians do, but you can't bullshit your way into being a spiritual person. Like, when you die, your soul, truth hits. The truth hits when you die, right? The truth of your existence hits you. Of course, you don't have a mind and a personality like we have here to deal with it, right? You're a soul that's already, your soul is always living in truth, right? But the farther you get away from your soul, the more you get into your own lies and your own bullshit. And so, with that, we have this, I'm going to go to Megyn Kelly next. And, the problem with Megyn Kelly and Trump and all these other people is they are linked to the truth community. Whether we believe them to be truthers or not doesn't matter. And so, we were supposed to bring in a truth to Joe Biden's lies, right? Not we, they. These people who claim to be representative of the truth community, they wanted our votes. They wanted, they were using our some of our talking, not that we have talking points, but they turned our stuff here into talking points. And of course they were right-wing truthers. They're the worst kind. They're not really truthers, but they're associated with that, right? Like I just saw MSNBC was saying that we have a flu epidemic and showed a picture, the thumbnail had Kennedy's picture. Kennedy is supposed to be a truther, a medical truther, and they're now saying that there's a flu epidemic and they're going to blame everything on our faulty narratives and why didn't you guys trust Pfizer, that kind of stuff. Like when it swings back, there's going to be a war on the truth community for, somehow participating in electing Trump. All these people, Turning Point, all these people, all these alternative people. And so when the consequences, when the checks come due, when the results are there from Trump's disastrous presidency, and everyone's going to realize that Trump was a lying sack of shit and he was a nightmare, and the Democrats come in with their bullshit, right? And they, when they turn this thing around, they're going to blame all of us. There's going to be censorship. They're going to say, hey, look what happens when you guys are able to verbalize your own opinions. Look at what happens when you guys are, because Trump has co-opted this movement. This is why he's fucking really a piece of shit, and everyone supporting him has fucked us right there, and it's right in their face, because none of these people are real truth seekers. That's my whole point. That's why I call them dumb fucks, but it's more than that. It's like that's a nice way to talk about the betrayal that they're doing and destroying something that was, the truth community has undermined everything because it's been compromised. But it could have been something. Like, it's all these things could have been better. America could have been better, right? I talk about how Master Chargy, the third master of the system, he came to America and he said, you guys could have taken everything good from every culture, because you have all the cultures represented here. And you could take the best of every culture, and every culture has something to offer, every race, every group of people. You could have taken the highest and the best, but you've taken the lowest, like, the criminality and the, all the bullshit, all the negative things, right? Like all these cultures, all these people have something good to offer. We're a melting pot. But instead of going up, we've gone down. Instead of embracing our higher nature, we've embraced our lower nature. And so, the results are before us. Anyways, let's go to Megyn Kelly here. So this popped up here.
It proves this guy was an agitator. This guy was out there looking for a fight.
This is a moment the news movement filmed on.
Okay, so what she's done here is she's taken her audio that I played yesterday when she was responding. She was saying that this guy got his ass kicked by some ICE guys and they broke a rib, and that he was looking for a fight, right? That's how, that wasn't about what you're seeing here. They also show this guy, Alex Peretti,
was an agitator. This guy was out there looking for a fight.
This is a moment the news movement filmed on January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Peretti.
It's not going to change.
Appears to be Alex Peretti. Why not get Alex Peretti? why just get a guy who appears?
A thing about how the far left reacts to this. Maybe they'll count it as another brutalization by the evil ICE. They go out there looking for confrontations that they can make go viral on their social media, or that they can use as propaganda. All of their enablers rush to social media and the cameras to say, you see?
He has his phone and a bottle of water, and they shot him 10 times.
I think of him in the best of the civil rights tradition.
Was actually killed for being a good Samaritan.
No sane person thinks.
Okay, so here's the issue. Both sides are fucking liars, piece of shit liars, and the worst kind of liars. Because what Megyn Kelly isn't saying is how the people on the right were calling this guy insurrectionist, a terrorist, and that he was going there purposefully to shoot these cops, which he clearly wasn't. Like, that's just out and out lie, and now they've had to back down on that. Is the left lying? Yeah, of course they are. They've been doing this for years, same bullshit, right? They both fucking suck. They're horrible fucking people. They shouldn't have anything to do with leadership positions, or they shouldn't be, in any kind, either whether it be the media or politics or business. They shouldn't be on top of other people in terms of the power rankings, because they're horrible liars and they manipulate the truth to justify doing bad shit to other people on the planet, right? That's the fucking human problem right there. The issue here is, let's let her finish.
Thinks they can do that without risking their life. No one. He thought it was his business to interfere, to inject himself in that situation, and found himself on the wrong end of ICE operators. And did that give him one modicum of hesitation to do it again? Do you think, having been roughed up by officers as you or I would be if we had done what Alex Preddy had done that first time, he learned anything? Did he understand that when you interfere in a lawful ICE operation or Border Patrol operation, you are placing yourself in physical danger? Broken bones and worse can happen to you. Of course he did.
All right, so she's just such a cunt. She's like the worst. Like the worst kind of cunt. I don't know if there's a good kind. I mean, she's not the good kind. The problem here is that the people with the power are Trump and ICE, right? Now, these dumbass, protesters, you guys know how I feel about protesters and people on the left. They are suck. They suck. They just suck as people, and this is stupid. It doesn't have any, it's just going to make things worse. But whatever he did here, whether it's kick the light out or get in the face of ICE and do these things, there are laws that you can arrest him for. Like, that's what you do. You arrest him. Put him in jail. Put him in fucking prison. Start locking these motherfuckers up, right? If they are breaking laws, and again, ICE shouldn't even be on the streets interacting with civilians. Like, this whole thing is based in bullshit Trump stuff and a need for martial law, which everyone on the right, particularly everyone in the truth community, even more so, and even people on the left, which isn't their thing, should be against, right? If this is Joe Biden, the left would be applauding it. That's how stupid people are. And the people on the right are applauding it. But they're pushing for martial law because they know at some point in the future they're going to have to tell you, fuck you. They're going to say, fuck you to your lifestyle, and you're not going to like it, and they're going to need to have something in place. Like, we've all known about this. Some of us, I've been talking about this for 10 years. People have been talking about it before that, right? I mean, even, 11 years now. Like, martial law was inevitable. I have a folder called Martial Law, and I have all this shit from, the Boston bombing on back, where they've, all these things to do with the stuff they did at the airport, all the grooming they were doing, all the stuff to get you used to that kind of behavior, being patted down and showing your papers and going through naked body scanners and all that shit. Treated like a criminal before you get on like everyone's a potential terrorist. That's the attitude here. And so that's what they're moving for. That's what the people that control Trump and control Biden know has to be in place. It's been in place in these other places. They have their protests. They let them have their little gay little protests, and then they're like, all right, that's enough. And then they crack down and everyone goes back to their homes. They let off a little steam, and nothing never changes. And so that's what they do in these other countries, because they don't have guns. And they have to disarm people. That's a whole other problem here in America. There's a whole other things they're going to have to do. Because when when people's lifestyle is taken away, they're going to be like way worse than any of this bullshit, right? And so the issue isn't, about this, anything this guy did, because nothing that he did was a justification for, unless he pulled out his weapon or he did something where he was like, he could actually harm one of the cops. And, they have other things like tasers and shit, right? Like there's all kinds of ways that you can avoid just unloading and dropping 10 bullets in a fucking dude when he's outnumbered 5-1 and he's disarmed. Like, it's just, this was a murder, straight up abuse of power. Again, like, I think the whole thing's fake and staged, like, or at least it could be, and it seems like that. I'm leaning towards that. I'll never know. You'll never know either, but we all have our opinions about that shit. But either way, what we saw there is a straight up murder. Like, there's no, what, is there something else here? No, it's fucking murder, right? There's no other explanation. There's no other way of thinking about it, right? No matter what he did, should he know better? Yeah. Could he know that this was happening? Certainly, if you see 2 people murdered and you're out there on the streets, this could potentially happen to you. And they're acting like they're in a war, these guys, these fucking liberal protesters. And so, yeah, if it happens to them, like, I don't, it's not about whether he deserved it or not. It's that you can't do that as a cop. And you're not even, as a regular cop, not this ICE bullshit, which you shouldn't even be out there. And so for her to, be on that side, every reporter should be on the other side. There's no defending this ICE guy, these ICE people, who are not going to go to jail because it's sending a fucking message that we can just straight up shoot you and then, slander you and say what a piece of shit you are, even though it has nothing to do with our, what we're supposed to be doing on our end, right? Because he could go to jail. Like, the thing is, if you get in a fight with a cop and you hit a cop, you're getting, probably a beatdown, but you're going to get resisting arrest, right? Like, they can give you a felony, but the cops can beat the shit out of you. Like, they can beat the shit out of you, but, like, there has to be some protocols and some, ways of, like, making sure that they don't do that. Otherwise, the abusive people will all end up wanting to be cops, right? If you could just get away with beating people and killing people, what kind of people you think are going to want to be cops then? And they're just going to be beating and killing people all the time. And you'll see what happens in these dystopian movies when that's the case. And so she's just an absolute cunt. And the rest of these people that are following along with this are morons. Because, within 4 years, less than 4 years, and 3 years, 2 years, you're going to have, 3 years, you're going to have a new president that's going to be a Democrat. And they're going to be, like, so gung-ho after all the shit that Trump's going to leave, the mess that Trump's going to leave behind. And they're going to use that justification to be like, total fucking, there's going to be a nightmare here. After what they just did with fucking, but during the Biden administration. So, this is, it's just going to go swinging back and forth, and people aren't going to realize, ever that you got to find some middle ground, or it's just going to be fucking, the end of civilization as you now know it. But there's other problems other than this, so, there's no stopping it. Like, this is coming. All right, so with that, let's go to Don Lemons. The name of this is Megyn Kelly is Such a Hypocrite. Classic Lemons.
I can't believe that I'm having to respond again to this woman who has once again attacked someone that I care about, who's attacked a friend. And my friend is, she likes to be, as Mariah Carey says, above the fray, right? And so I will respond for her because I can. This is what Megyn Kelly said about my friend Kara Swisher.
Kara Swisher.
We're at the Pivot Podcast.
The Pivot Podcast.
She is saying that Kara Swisher, this is sick. Megyn Kelly accuses Kara Swisher of trying to get Stephen Miller killed.
They really got her. Look at this fucking dude right here. They really got her with the picture.
And basically...
I mean, look at that fucking... That is not a bone structure of... It's either an alien or a dude or an alien dude. Or whatever.
What he is saying here is because Scott and Kara are talking about the unhinged things that Stephen Miller does in,
Okay, so let's get to the thing that Megyn Kelly said. I actually think I saw this when I was looking for the other thing I just showed you.
I know I'm supposed to feel sorry for Alex Preddy, but I don't. I don't. Do you know why I wasn't shot by Border Patrol?
You know what? I don't feel sorry for him either, but I can tell you this is wrong. Right? Like, so I don't feel sorry for anybody. Like, this is, it's making it sound like things, there's no, that God isn't in charge of anything, I mean, I can feel sorry for somebody's feelings towards the shit that's befalling them, but everything that happens because of a part of a plan, or there's no God, right? It's one of the two. It's all either all or nothing. It's like God is 70%. There's a God's plan, right? Everything that happens to you either is a part of something your soul mind you experience, or it's a result of consequences for something that happened before. And so, you know, like I said before, they punish you for telling the truth. Like, that's the society we live in. And so everything has consequences for it. And you got to realize that there are consequences on a spiritual level. If you don't have to pay for them now, you're going to have to pay for them in a future life. And so, like, I don't feel sorry for people, but you can't say that this is okay what the ICE guys are doing. Even if you, like I said, just because liberals are annoying doesn't mean you get to shoot them, right? And so, like, this is not okay. It's not legally okay. It's certainly not morally okay. And everyone should condemn it. Like, there should be nobody, like, on this side of the thing.
This weekend because I kept my ass inside and out of their operations. It's very simple. If I felt strongly enough about something the government was doing that I would go out and protest, I would do it peacefully on the sidewalk without interfering, via a whistle, via shouting, via my body, via any other way. I would make my objections known by standing there without...
Okay, she's like, this, all right. Then this, I guess she says something here.
His lawyer's talking to him. He's shaking. It's upsetting to watch. It's like, I feel like the media is just so awful, Andrew. They've been so disgusting from the beginning.
I think she's crying about Kyle Rittenhouse here.
Doesn't mean that you have to. And maybe Megyn Kelly should take my mother's advice. Because just because you can say it, it doesn't mean that you should say it. Or you have to.
See, this is the thing with Don Lemons. He's doing what I do, right? Where I show you that people are not against behaviors. I'm sure he can't articulate it because he's dumb as fuck. But I show you about, where, like I say, people are not upset about the behavior. They're upset of the subject. They're completely subjective, which Don Lemon is 100% all about that shit, right? I mean, he's, like the people that applaud things when it's on their side. And then, remember that woman went after Marjorie Taylor Greene, that woman, whatever her name is, from Texas. And she called her a beach blonde, butch body, whatever it is. And everyone was applauding her. But when Marjorie Taylor Greene was calling names, it was like, this is inappropriate, right? And so, like, it's, you can't applaud the behavior just because your side is doing it and condemn it when the other side does the same behavior. And that's, that's true hypocrisy. I got the hypocrisies off the charts thing. I'm not going to show it here. Maybe at the end of this clip if I remember. But, like he's going to show her with Kyle Rittenhouse.
Say it. Because that was deplorable. Now, she has no empathy for this man and his family. But she wants empathy for this. Watch.
Kyle Rittenhouse just fell to his knees in tears. He's on his knees. His lawyer's talking to him. He's shaking. It's upsetting to watch. It's like, I feel like the media is just so awful, Andrew. They've been so disgusting from the beginning.
Is she talking about herself?
This boy is feeling.
Pause. Immediately, is he talking about?
Yeah, she could be talking about both of you. Like, this is the problem. These people are so not self-reflective, right? Remember when this piece of shit was saying that we should shame anti-vaxxers, right? Leave them behind. And, then when everything came out that we were right and he was wrong, did he say sorry and he was wrong? No, of course not. He failed upwards, right? Like they fired him, not for that. So you get the idea here. And then something happens over here.
Grifter? Here is a grifter. Charlie Kirk video. Roll it.
They're reporting that Charlie has died. That he's dead. At the age of 31.
Look at these fucks.
Which he would have to be if that video was real.
You sad, bro?
There's no way he survived that. The only good thing is, it had to have happened quickly.
Boom. He's already got a silver lining.
Right.
Okay, so here's the thing with that. Now, I'm not doubting that they were emotional in the moment. That's not the point here. But the point is that she can show empathy when she wants to. I'm trying to show you the hypocrisy of it.
Have you ever thought about yourself, bro, like how hypocritical you are? Like, just, I mean, Like they're just so horrible.
And I'm sure she was emotional. Who wouldn't be watching that video? The response from everyone was, it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, that wasn't my response, bro. Here.
But I don't. I don't. Do you know why I wasn't shot by Border Patrol this weekend? Because I kept my ass in.
Okay, we saw that, right? How many times are you going to show that shit? So here's this one here.
But that he was into the barely legal type. Like he liked 15-year-old girls. And I realize this is disgusting. I'm definitely not trying.
He's got a lot of good clips from her. Like this idea that they're trying to minimize the Jeffrey Epstein thing. All right, let me finish up here, and then I'll go to the comments and the last thing I want to show you.
Oh, that you should. Now, we're all, in television or whatever it is that we're doing in front of microphones, and you say things that you regret or you wish would come out. But I mean, there's been a series recently of those things happening. I mean, and really, really egregious things. So I agree with the streamer. None of this is about principle. She doesn't care about anybody but herself. This is
okay. And you do? Like, I mean, you guys are just horrible. None of you guys should be, have any influence over any people at all. Like all these mainstream media people, most of these popular, whatever they are. I mean, only from the standpoint that the people are dumber and lower in their consciousness. But you're not pulling them up, right? You're not, whatever. Speaking of which, let's go to the Bible stuff here.
The hypocrisy is off the charts, and it is sickening. I think we have to stop coddling people when it comes to this and the vaccine, saying, oh, you can't shame them. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them silly. Yes, they are. The people who aided and abetted Trump are stupid because they believed his big lie. The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them. What else? Or leave them behind. Because they are keeping the majority of Americans behind.
So somebody sent this to me on Instagram, and it said, after he started hearing voices, Abe cut his genitals and tried to murder his child. Nearly 4 billion people don't think this sounds crazy. So, this goes with what I always say, right? And then this here, when his son Isaac was 8 years old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded, right? You can read the full chapter here. Now the Lord has gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah born. When his son Isaac was 8 years old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. So I don't know why God would command you to cut your fucking foreskin. Let me go to a voiceover here. Okay, so for those of you who are listening to this on the Journey series, somebody sent me a meme that said, after he started hearing voices, Abe cut his genitals and tried to murder his child. Nearly 4 billion people don't think this sounds crazy. And then the biblical verse was, when Isaac's son was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded. And again, this 8 days old thing, God was going to kill Moses. I think, was it Moses? And Moses' wife went and did it because Moses really didn't want to do it because it's fucked. But I was saying, why would God want to circumcise? Why would God, let's put it this way. And this is an irrefutable point that none of these biblical motherfuckers can dispute. Because if God created the heaven and earth, God is the Father and Creator of all existence, then he created you. Why did he create you with something that needed to be cut off? An operation on the most sensitive part of your body. And it's an organ. Your foreskin is an organ. It, covers, it is filled with nerve endings, so it's a very painful operation. I went into this in one of my other videos, how painful it is, how painful it is for adults to have done. And you're removing an organ. You're removing a part of your body that God gave to you, right? Like, the genital mutilation. This is genital mutilation. And it's a fucked up thing that these motherfucking fucked up people do. and they claim God wants it to be done. And this is what I was talking about earlier in the video. All this shit where you say God wants you to do this. God told me he wants you to do this, right? David Koresh, who was, a gifted biblical interpreter, said he was going to open up the 7 seals. Of course he didn't. He ended up being shot to death. But he had his followers, and he was, kind of a brilliant biblical scholar, and he really was impressive to these people. And one day he said, God only wants the women in the house in this cult, not that he called it a cult, to have children with my genetics. So their husbands couldn't sleep with their wives. Only he could sleep with their wives. And he had all these kids running around that he had fathered because he was, claiming God told him that was the way it was, right? And you can't do that kind of shit, right? You can't fucking, tell other people how to live their lives based in your conversations with God, right? Everybody has the ability to connect with God. And so you can tell them what you believe needs to be done, and then they have to figure out, if that's true or not in terms of their relationship with God. And why would God command that, right? What David Koresh said, because those kids were going to probably interact with each other, and maybe some of them would hook up and their cousins. It's a fucked up thing. Like, if you're going to create a group that's going to be there to save the world, you're going to need to spread the genetics around. Like, you're going to need, a diversity of genetics. So that's like completely fucked, right? That's like inbreeding. But in terms of God wanting to to mutilate some young baby boys because he fucked up, like, and gave you a foreskin. He gave you a foreskin that you shouldn't have, right? And so why would God want that? So that means the Bible is lying about what God wants and doesn't want. Because God could, if you think about all the miracles that God's done in the Bible and created people, he would just stop creating dudes with foreskins. You don't have to have a foreskin. That's God's fault, right? Did he fuck up when he gave you a foreskin? Or did he fuck up when he told you to cut it off? Like, which one is it, right? You think about every artist, right? Like, if an artist, a sculptor, put something on a body and made a mistake, he wouldn't say, hey, everybody, all these sculptors, all this sculpture I did, you guys fix it, right? Like, I fucked up the sculpture. You guys who have no skill, you take off the thing I should have carved into the stone. Or a painter saying that to a bunch of kids, hey, like, I fucked up this painting, you guys fix it with your finger paints, right? Like, why would God make you fix something that he created wrongly? Like, he fucked men up by giving them a foreskin. Like, it's just, what? Like, why did he do that? Again, this is an organ that has all these the sensitivities and nerve endings, and it's got, it's a part of your body, and you've got it mutilated by these fucking sick motherfuckers, right? All of us who've had that, we got mutilated. There's a whole thing there. You can read, there's all this stuff about, anti-circumcision. There's like a circumcision truth movement out there that tells you everything that you need to know about how fucked up it is for that operation to happen on babies when they're that old. And it certainly didn't come from fucking God, and the Old Testament's fucking a piece of shit, like I always say, because there's weird shit about that. Like, why is God obsessed with that? So much that he was going to kill Moses, right? So here's the biblical passage, right, from Moses. And again, Moses was like, God just fucking tortured the motherfucker. He was constantly getting mad at him. I think about all the stuff that Moses went through, all the shit he did for God. It was never fucking enough because God's a petty little bitch in the Old Testament. It's not God is separate from people. The Creator is not, your Father's not separate from you. You're physically connected, but a divine essence of God is not separated for anything in creation. And anytime you suffer, he suffers. There's no jealousy. Like, there's no jealousy like there's nothing like God doesn't have the capacity to be jealous. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. Surely you are bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So the Lord let him alone. At that time, she was the bridegroom of blood, referring to the circumcision. So, like, how fucked is that, right? God was going to kill Moses for not circumcising his son. Like, that's how strongly God feels about it. But God couldn't like make babies without foreskins, right? Like, why are you doing that? Like, you want to fucking God wants to torture motherfuckers. He wants to torture the parents who have to listen to their babies cry, their mothers and things. All the, people who have a heart and they're not fucking dumb fucks and they realize there's something wrong about this and they're pressured by their families to do this weird fucking behavior. And they see their kids suffering and they see the operation and all that shit, It's, I mean, you could Google and search for pictures and what it looks like. It's they're ripping something off. It's this is surgery. You're 8 days old and you're having fucking surgery. And they don't give you, they can't give you anesthesia. It's just a brutal operation. They're like, oh, babies don't feel pain. Right? They're like, fuck this guy. You're like, go ahead, just do a surgery on the most sensitive part of his body 8 days into the kid being born. Of course, now they do it in hospitals that day, right out, you're fresh out of the womb and they circumcise you. Like, that's how fucked that is, right? The medical community buying into this bullshit. And so, this is just one of many things that are fucked about the Bible. And, there's no denying it. It's just, people being indoctrinated to it. But anybody coming from the outside in goes, wow, that's weird as fuck, right? When you hear about Mormon shit and you're a Christian, you're like, oh, those guys are weird over there. Yeah, you're weird fucking too, motherfuckers. God does not give a shit about foreskins. In fact, if it's created for a reason. It wasn't accidental that you have a foreskin. It's there for a fucking reason. It's part of the, God is, I fucked you guys up with those fucking foreskins. You guys got to cut these off in 8 days. Why 8 days? Like, when God fucked up. Like, what responsibility is God taking for making men with foreskins? Because it's a fucked up, twisted bullshit religion that people buy into because they're indoctrinated, and that's the only reason. Anybody with half a brain coming from the outside in would say, oh, wow, you guys are fucked. Okay, so with that, there were a couple comments. Did I have the comments here, or did I have to? Here's one of them. And that's not it. Okay, so I got to find these comments. Okay, before I go find those comments, there's another fucked up part of this, and it's this. So Abraham his wife Sarah couldn't get pregnant. So there was a woman named Hagar, something like that. Hagar. And she was a Muslim woman. She wasn't Jewish. She was what was going to end up being Muslim. She's Arab. And she's a servant, a slave. And he impregnates her, so he basically rapes her because she's a slave. And impregnates her. And her son is Ishmael, right? And Ishmael is the first, what's end up going to be like Muslim Arabs. And he's going to inherit all of Abraham's, whatever he has to inherit. And then his wife gets pregnant because God fucks that things up, right? Again, delays till the end of his life. And, so there's the division. So that's like the sons of Isaac and the sons of Ishmael. These are this bullshit that's going on in the Middle East started with that. So that's the first fucked up thing. But then God says, hey, I know I gave you this miracle baby, but I want you to bring him up to the top of the mountain and fucking kill him. And he goes, okay, and brings him up there. Exactly the kind of thing that God would do. Like fucking, this God that they worship, who's a demon, that's a demon thing. I mean, that isn't even a bad person. This is a fucking demon. This is shit demons do, people that would torture you, right? That you have to prove what if your mob boss said to you, your regular boss couldn't, I want you to prove your loyalty to me, go kill your first and only born son. Like, what animal, what piece of shit would do that? But then he gets up there and goes, haha, I was just kidding. Kill this sheep instead, because we got to fucking kill something. Sacrifice the sheep, because the fucking animal, human sacrifice, God's into it, right? All these motherfuckers were into it with their weird fucking religion, because, they sacrifice to Baal and, Baal and all these other Moloch, all these fucking gods and whatever they have over there. Because they're weird fucking people. This is a weird fucking area where they do weird fucking shit, right? A lot of violence, and this is why they've been beefing for 5,000 years over there, because this is a fucking twisted culture that's completely fucked. And so, and then he goes, all right, well, as long as you have the knife, why don't you cut off his fucking foreskin? And so, this is how fucked up this thing is, right? This is the word of God. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you fucking... you're lying to yourself. You've been indoctrinated. You're in a fucking cult. Like, that's shit cult followers believe in. Okay, I found one of the two comments I wanted to talk to you about. Paul, I have a question. I'm sorry if you already addressed this, but I noticed whenever you talk about Christians that sometimes mention their belief in the devil, specifically whenever Erika Shekels keeps on saying the enemy. That being said, do you believe in the devil or Satan? If not, where do you believe evil originated? Thank you again for your great content, as always. Okay, so, there are demonic souls. Sajmarg, there's not a lot of talk about shit like that, right? The dark souls and shit, because, it's not, they don't want to focus on, focus on the positive. You're trained as a preceptor that suggestions that are given, spiritual suggestions, should always be worded positively. Like Chargy talked about how, in India, people are always cursing their kids and their grandkids, or old people in previous generation. And also there's a very fear-based culture. And he talked about how, they worry so much. And if a kid's going out to an exam, they'll say, be careful, like, don't fail, be careful, don't fail. And, on a spiritual level as well as a psychological level, you never want to focus on the negative, right? You guys all know that. You probably had that in your life where you can psych yourself out. You think about missing a shot or, doing the wrong thing, and it's like becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You start dwelling on the negative, right? And so when your mind, and on a subconscious level, your mind doesn't process the word no. So there's no on a subconscious level. So anything that you say with don't or no or a negative in there, the negative thing gets taken out. So you're giving yourself, as if you said, like, don't smoke. I can't smoke. I won't smoke. The can't, the won't, and the no or don't won't be processed by your subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind will be saying, instead of saying, I won't smoke, it'll say, I smoke. I shouldn't smoke, I smoke, right? It removes the shouldn't. And so all suggestions and all goals should be worded positively. So there's not a lot of dwelling on the shit that people do that's failure. But it's a good thing to know and then forget about, right? The individuality that we praise so much and is so important, our individual freedoms and individuality, is really fucking where evil comes from, right? This idea that I am the doer. And so this person asks, where does original sin or original evil comes from? It comes from this idea, I do, I am, I think, right? I. Separate from the source, separate from the whole. And so we do have an individual identity, but once we start thinking of ourselves as an individual, then we break away from the whole, and it becomes you're over there and I'm over here, right? Me against the world, fuck all y'all, which, I've appreciated all those kind of things personally, and have said those things myself as recently as when everybody kind of turned on me when I was going through the divorce and all that shit, and I was like, fuck all y'all. But, it's not a positive, truthful statement, because we're all in this together. And there's nothing you can't do that you can do without God. Like, you can't successfully do anything without God, right? So I do is where people fall. I am. So evil exists separating oneself from God, where you no longer are connected to God. You no longer ask God permission for everything that you do. And once you start doing that, then you start fucking up and doing selfish shit, and it just spirals from there, right? And so in the Bible, and I'm not all that familiar with the story of Lucifer, but, there was the Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones, and then there was some famous book by somebody, not Caligula. It's one of those, it's a book that you've probably heard the title of, where the guy takes a sympathetic look at the devil, because the devil is questioning God, right? And that's the other place where evil comes from. So the idea of a fall from God is when you start thinking you know more than God, and you think you should do it your way and not God's way. that God isn't perfect. And God is perfect because God doesn't think. God can't psych himself out. God can't have a negative thought. God can't have a selfish thought. Like, God doesn't think. God doesn't, once you have the ability to think, you have the ability to make wrong choices, right? Once you have the ability to contemplate things and then say, hey, I don't agree with what God's doing here. And so once you start doing that shit, right, then you're on a slow path to hell, right? That's where, Lucifer fell, whatever. Again, the Bible is just a very remedial book in lots of ways, and the Old Testament's so fucked. But the way God's presented, a God that gets jealous isn't God, right? God can't get jealous. God can't separate. You're a part of God. So God doesn't look at you as something outside of the his creation. So evil exists when anybody intentionally or willfully or unintentionally goes against the will of God and makes choices that go against the divine order of things. And we all have that choice, and everybody exercises it, so everybody participates in evil. So that's the idea of being born a sinner. You have the potential to make those choices, right? And so focusing on the devil, like there's some being out there. People think of the devil being equal or almost equal to God, and there's God, and God's all powerful but has to play by the rules, and the devil is, not as powerful but can cheat and lie and take shortcuts. But the devil is not, some being. I mean, there are evil beings that are maybe powerful souls that were close in proximity to God and then fell from, their divine abode and then now are existing with some power and some whatever. And they, certainly will negatively influence people. If you're around such a person, if you've been around a demonic person, you know how they've affected your life, right? So, there's that. But people, if you're doing the right thing, like if people are focused on God and working for God and serving God, and, you're disciplined enough to not allow your mind to go down those paths of, shit that are wrong. Like when you make a choice that is the wrong choice, and then you're like, wow, I'm suffering. Yeah, of course you are. You knew it was wrong and you did it anyway, right? So I don't know. I've heard Chargy talk a little bit about, and I'm not sure what he called Satan. It was a different name, but like this idea. So there are, negative souls, but really, it's only, if you invite that in, like you can make your own choices. Anyways, you get the idea, I think. The other thing here is I got to wrap this up. I'm like worn out from. I've had this whole thing with the hawk, which I'll hopefully post some videos of that. I don't know if I have enough time to get this video done tonight, so we'll see. This person writes, really appreciate your points, Paul. The year of accountability does make sense to me. I wanted to say I subbed to you when you talked of the likes of Mandis and Manania. Mandis and Mania? I'm not sure who that is. Is that, anyways. And also not agreeing with you on your statements on the Bible and Christianity. Unsub with an emoji. But I was wrong and you were right. Paul, I'm grateful for your videos and your sharing your experiences and knowledge. I was thinking this year, genuineness would be on trial. I think you are correct here. Thank you. As always, Paul, appreciate you so much. So that was, and this happens every once in a while where someone comes back and it's like, yeah, I was pissed off at you and then you were right. Because I am right. Like, not all the time. I don't even know. But, like the stuff I say is practical, right? Like, I don't have something against Christianity. What I have against Christianity is Jesus has his original message and intent. And he had whatever system he had in place for, the idea of divinity within, whatever his primary message was, whatever his work was, and whatever he was doing with his followers, whatever he did himself and whatever they were doing, it had a positive effect. Jesus was a spiritual person that had a positive effect in that area of the world. And, it's a good thing. I'm not against that at all. I'm totally for that. But it's when they took his words and they were like, and twisted them. And also, Jesus was born a Jewish person, but he transcended his religion. He wasn't Jewish in his, he went to India and he learned some stuff. And I don't know how much of that was edited out. I don't know how much he even talked about that or gave credit to that. I don't even know. Like, it's not important. But he became a spiritual person. You know, everyone should transcend their religion at some point in their existence. And, you know, it might not be this life, but at some point in their existence, and have a interpersonal relationship with God. And everybody can do it, but not everybody can do it, right? Like, everybody has the potential within them, but lots of people aren't mature or developed enough to do that. And that's just the start. Like, that's when you become like a human being, like a real human being, when you have, you know, an inner connection with the divinity within you, and you start answering to God and taking responsibility for your decisions based in, you know, God's there and advising you. So when you make a mistake, you know, you're choosing to ignore the divinity within you, and you know you're doing wrong, and you suffer more because, you know, you have the ability to do it the right way, where other people don't, right? You know, animals and, you know, lower consciousness people don't have the ability to do that. But it's something for everyone to aspire to. And when you take somebody's teachings and you turn it into some dog shit thing that actually thwarts that process and keeps people trapped and you know, from moving forward spiritually, then you get the mess that we have here. Our two biggest religions, Christianity and the Muslim religion, and then the Jewish religion, are all tied to that shitty religion there. You know, there's been compromises with the Hindu religion. I've talked about the good things of Hindu religion, but there's a lot of fucked up things in that culture. Like, fucked up things, like in all these cultures. And, you know, Buddha, like, that whole thing is a whole nother, you know, there's good things in all of the religions, and there's a spiritual tract, like an honor society, like a gifted and talented stuff. Like in the Muslim religion, they have the Sufis and some of these other things that are, you know, I really enjoy watching the whirling dervishes. I don't know what they do, but it's very pleasing for me to watch those guys. You know, like the way that they fucking do that whirling dervish shit is amazing. You know, I don't think it's very spiritual, but it's very peaceful. There's something good about it, right? If you guys watch that. But, you know, the Sufis are great, and that's, you know, part of the Saj Marg system as well. The Sufis were, you know, ancient Sufis were doing transmission years and years ago. And, you know, the masters, the first two masters of Saj Marg had, especially the first master, Lalaji, had interactions with Sufi gurus and things, so they had an influence. Even though he was a Hindu, there was some connection there. But, you know, suffices to say that when you become a spiritual person, then you can see through religious bullshit. And it's not like you have to be that developed as a spiritual person, because the religious bullshit is just shitty. But if you've been born into it, indoctrinated into it, and your whole family and parents are connected to that thing, it's difficult. It's really hard, right? So there's all that. All right. I don't know if there's anything more here. I gotta go get dinner, and so I'll be back to wrap this up tonight or tomorrow. Okay, so I ate dinner and I took the dogs for a walk. You know, our dogs, it's so cold out that they I might even say this in the beginning of the video. I haven't done the beginning yet, so it's so cold that, you know, they walk for a little bit, and one of them will end up limping because one of their paws is getting so cold they won't want to put it on the ground anymore. So they've been taking really short walks, really not even going into the pasture area. And I checked the chickens, and the one chicken, Goldie, was not out, right? Like, she was still in the old barn. She hadn't left the chicken house until the hawk went in there. And now I didn't know if she didn't want to go back because she's getting picked on or because of the hawk or whatever. You know, like I was saying at some point in this video, and I say all the time, that God has a plan. So it's easy to accept how shitty the world is. You know, if you think about it from a standpoint that there is a period where you have the freedom of choice, right? And so when you leave your house, either go to college or you move out on your own, and you're no longer living with your parents and you're still relatively young, almost everybody makes bad choices at that time, right? Drugs, alcohol, you know, a number of things. And so, you know, like, you're out on your own. If your parents leave you alone in your house, you make a bad fucking decision, have a party, you know, a number of things. You know, I talked about the time my parents left me alone. I was 7 or 8 years old, and my sister had made candles with me. She had a candle making kit, and we heated up wax, and there was a little mold of an owl, I believe. And they had some wicks, and we melted some wax, and we poured it in there, and It hardened and it made an owl candle. And I, took an old pill bottle and some string, and I had made a candle out of it. And I did a second time, and I used Hungry Man tin foil things, which figured I could throw out. And we had a gas stove, and when I heated them, they melted, and the gas and the wax started to burn on the burner. It was a big flame, so I threw water on it, and it just exploded. The whole thing exploded, and wax went everywhere in this old fucking dingy wallpaper we had. And I remember looking at it going, I'm getting in trouble. So should I bother even trying to clean this fucking thing up? Because, there's hardened wax all over the floor, all over the walls, and I'm like 8 years old, So, you make decisions like that. Like, you learn things. Everybody can trace back and think about things that they did when they were, got old enough to make choices, and they had, higher levels of comprehension and things, all along your life. And you start making choices, many of them bad choices, and you learn from them. Like, it's a teaching moment. And so if you think about human collective society and where we are culturally and where we are in terms of, we have this advanced scientific knowledge and technical knowledge, but we're very immature, and we make a lot of fucking bad choices and do a lot of bullshit things, and then there's going to be severe consequences for it. And humanity, goes up to a higher level of understanding of the responsibility behind these choices, right? When you go out and get drunk and you drive and you wreck your car or something, or, almost, die, whatever it is, and you realize, hey, I can't be this guy. Like, if I'm going to have the responsibility of driving, I got to mature into the kind of person that is capable of handling this responsibility. And so if you think about that as a collective level of our consciousness rising, a big part of the problem right now is fucking religion, right? That's fucked everybody and kept people from accessing, has prevented people from accessing a higher level of consciousness that we all have at our disposal, and cut us off from the divinity within us. I was thinking about, if you look up circumcision, going back to this, whatever the circumcision thing, if you look up circumcision, you find out, what it does to somebody. And, all of us who grew up in America and are heavily influenced by this, these religions, and have been pressured to be circumcised because of this bullshit fucking thing that's in the Old Testament and the Hebrew Bible. And, they turned it into quite a scam. And they're, think about, like, when if you've had kids, or if you can imagine a baby, and you're asked to, they're asked, do you think Abraham was a fucking surgeon, right? You think these people that cut their baby's foreskins off as a first act, like the kid, newborn baby, 8 days fucking old, doesn't have a fucking immune system yet, can't talk, can't, feed itself. I mean, totally helpless, cute little baby. And you're going to fucking, you as a parent are going to sit there and cut his penis, the foreskin on his penis off, right? You think that's a fucking, like, you would want to do that? And when your kid's screaming and crying, and, for days, like, the pain goes on for days, learned helplessness. It's going to break the kid a little bit, that's like a trauma right out of the fucking gate. And you think that fucking, you could do that as a parent, like, you could perform surgery on your kid right now because of some bullshit book. Like, most people know it is the word of God. Yeah, well, a lot of Christians aren't getting their kids' foreskins, mutilated, right? Aren't doing that. And if there's a number of these truther sites out there. If you do any research into it, and you see the effects of, this has on a baby, it's a trauma, and what it does to you. And so, fuck these guys. I mean, they did this to all of us that have had that happen, right? And we don't know what damage it's done. Like, it's, there's something there. It's not nothing, right? My ex and I knew about this. And so, my two sons didn't get circumcised. Like, it was, we're not Christian anyway. And, I grew up Catholic, but, that's, which I graduated into doing spiritual practice. And my son had this thing called phimosis, which is, it, like, it can, the hole at the end of the foreskin can get smaller. And, seemed like problematic, and we looked into it. And I was taking him to a doctor. We had moved to a second farm, and our old farm was being sold. We were 5 hours away from it. There's a whole thing, the story behind it. It was a stressful time. And I went back there by myself with my son to go to this doctor. And, was really concerned about making the right decision, because it was going to take a minor surgery to open up the foreskin. And the doctor seemed like a creep. He was an old kind of, like, I didn't trust him. And maybe some car issues. And I was just aggravated and frustrated. I felt bad. And I was stressed out. And, I decided, I was like, we're not doing this. And the problem resolved itself, which often happens. Kids get older, 14, 15, they enter into puberty, and it just ends up going away. It just fixes itself. But my dumb fuck parents and my mom was a hypochondriac. They didn't think about things like that, right? They didn't, they were just sheeple, just going along with whatever people do. People think babies aren't going to remember shit or be affected by it. You totally are, right? You're more susceptible to trauma. I remember I was in Texas, and the third master of Sizemore system came to Texas, Master Chargy, and I brought my firstborn son out, and he was a little bit cold there, 45, 50 degrees, and my son had a hat on, and there was another baby that had just been born, the same day or the day before or after, and I knew the woman, she was a little bit younger than me, and she was with her baby, right, and Chargy looked at the two babies and he said, your baby should have a hat, to the woman. Like, a baby's head needs to be protected. Your bones in your skull are not fully formed so you can pass through the birth canal and the vagina, right? It's cervix. And, your head is kind of flexible. And babies have that soft spot at the top of their head. And all those spiritual points are very, you're not supposed to expose your baby to Wi-Fi and shit like that. Things like heavy metal music and, whatever it is. You're very sensitive. Babies are supposed to be protected. They're not fully developed. There's lots of animals that can't see, can't, hear yet. They're born blind and deaf. These baby bunnies that we see, sometimes our dog catches them, of course, little puppies and a lot of these animals. So they're very helpless in the beginning. And so they need to be in a safe environment and free from trauma, and trauma can really affect them. So I looked up the negative psychological effects of circumcision, and it added an article to it. Research suggests potential negative psychological effects of circumcision, particularly when performed with inadequate anesthesia, which can trigger intense pain, acute stress responses, and long-term psychological trauma. Study have linked neonatal circumcision to increased emotional instability, difficulty with bonding in adult relationships, lower stress thresholds, and a higher risk of PTSD symptoms. Key findings regarding the negative psychological effects include emotional attachment issues. I'm not going to even go through all these. I'm just going to read there's trauma and stress response, behavioral and cognitive impacts. The mainstream medical community, who's been doing this for years, isn't going to come out and say, yeah, you guys are all fucked. You're all fucked up and we shouldn't have been doing this because of the power structure and all the religious and the way the media is controlled and all that shit, right? The people responsible for this. And so, this is just some mainstream AI response, but if you go into some of these websites, people have done substantial research on this, and it's a fucked up thing. And so this is just one negative effect of the Old Testament and some fucked up shit that they said God said to do, and it's not true, right? And if you think, the effects of all these things that come out of these religions, they're, lying and cheating and, all the fucking shit that people do and violence, and there's a lot of negativity that's born into people being cut off from their higher nature and not evolving and not moving forward. So, when I say this about the Old Testament and all these religions, it's because of that. It's not like it hasn't had a negative effect, because it has across the board. And that all is going to have to be reversed. And, people who do this, who use God's name and claim power and authority when they're not connected to God at all, and they're just using it for their own benefit, that's a fucked up thing. Anyways, I got to wrap this up. My voice is starting to go. Only spirituality will save this world. It's power model, definitely foreign to them. The apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.